Marhaba and hello to everyone. Once again, I'm historian and writer Dr. Jack Dempsey, living in Crete these days. And I'm speaking with my friend Muhammad Jihad Ismael, a Palestinian writer and historian living in Gaza, Deir al-Balah specifically, in the Gaza territory. Today is Saturday, May 27th, 2023. We're talking all this month, Muhammad and I, and many others, of course, about the 75-year anniversary of the Nakba, the invasion of Palestine by the Zionist British-backed forces that took over that whole territory and displaced tens and hundreds of thousands of people. So we're going to listen to Muhammad today as he helps us to commemorate some of those historical realities. Meanwhile, of course, as always, we don't want to forget the immediate present reality where the people of Gaza, 2.5 million of them, half of them children, have been confined behind barbed wire and machine guns and tanks and every other aspect of the military in Gaza since that place was locked up, closed down. Maybe you've got 8 hours of electricity a day, maybe. If you're thirsty, there's virtually no clean drinking water. You have to buy it, boil it, every other kind of, well, inconvenience that makes life miserable. If you're hungry, you're sharing the competition for with 12,000 other people for every one truck that is allowed with food and supplies into Gaza per day, if you're lucky. And again, if you're lucky, hospitals and medicine. It's a dire, incredibly beyond description situation there. They have so little facilities for taking care of their sick and people who are injured and so forth. So, as we always say, what does a person who wants to offer some kind of help think? Well, what can I do? And there are, as we always say, three things at least. Write to your own government and demand that they change the policies that are either indifferent to or supportive of apartheid Israel against the Palestinian people. Second is to practice BDS. Do not buy and definitely avoid anything that is produced by Israeli factories and companies in the occupied territories. And you can even buy Palestinian olive oil online, which would be a great boon since they are so little allowed to do any business. And the third thing is this little program Muhammad and I are still trying to get off the ground called Family to Family. Muhammad and I have known each other about 2 years through a book that I published, and our families have become very close. We were able to send them some money from time to time through Western Union, no banks, no NGOs, no outside profits, and the funds go directly to Muhammad and his family. This resulted in about a year when his two little daughters were born of canned milk. We were able to supply medicines, vitamins, and so forth. You can work out any kind of arrangement you like with a family that Muhammad will connect you with, and you will see the results directly of your reaching literally over the walls of Gaza to help these people survive with a normal life. Finally, if you really want to see the results that we've been able to generate, go to Jack Dempsey Writer at WordPress.com, Jack Dempsey Writer at WordPress.com, and you'll see multiple pages with beautiful photographs of Muhammad and his family and the upgrades and changes they've been able to make to their home through our cooperation. So please don't be afraid. You will have the most wonderful friendships you maybe could ever imagine. And it is a tremendously good feeling to be able to help people inside those walls, despite every kind of prejudice against them. They can't receive a book by mail. We wanted to, my wife is a great crochet artist and she wanted to make sweaters for the little children to keep warm in the winter. Can't send them. No, they might be used, I guess, against the apartheid state and all its wonderful legitimacy and glory and security. Anyway, with that rant ended, I'd like to say hello and welcome my brother Muhammad. And today, again, we're going to be talking about the 75-year anniversary of the beginning of the Nakba, when Muhammad's own family was thrown out of their home in the ancient village of Shafir. Muhammad, the first thing I want to ask you, if you don't mind, even before we get to that, is that when we were talking a little in our pregame meeting, you were coughing. And I know that about 2 weeks ago, during the shelling and bombing and missile attacks that Israel launched against Gaza in response for these little firework type rockets that Hamas sends over in all stupidity, that a 2,000-pound bomb exploded not very far from your house. And you said the air was full of a red dust, like a gas, for a long time after that. And since you have to go out to take care of your family, you managed to breathe in some of that, and you've been coughing ever since. We don't know. We don't know if this was a chemical weapon involved, is something that's to generate God knows what kinds of respiratory difficulties that Muhammad might be having right now. We'll keep you posted on that. But Muhammad, I know that the whole world that cares about the cause of justice for the Palestinians wants to hear the next step. So we're going to watch you until next week, until you go to the doctor and get some kind of an examination to see if you're okay. Is that agreed?
Yes, yes, brother.
Okay, so
Thank you.
the floor is yours, and anywhere you want to start with talking about the 75-year period that began with your own family's exile and the birth of your father beside the road on the way to the refugee camp in Gaza, where your family has never left since.
Yes, brother. Thank you so much for this new opportunity. I am so happy, despite this pain and this suffering. I am so happy to be speaking with you and our friends from all over the world. Nowadays, we have the 75th anniversary of Nakba, the Palestinian catastrophe. In 1948, and exactly in the middle of May, Israel used to announce the Jewish state of Israel on the ruins of Palestine. Before this time, we had more than 500 Palestinian villages. Those villages were pulsing with life, with civilization, with culture. This culture has very, very extended roots inside the earth, traveling to so many thousands of years. Unfortunately, those villages were slaughtered in very few days, very few weeks by the Zionist gangs. We have more
Mohammed,
than 500
I'm
villages.
sorry to interrupt, but I just want to tell our audience that you and I have done some, I think, pretty good programs exploring the cultural life of your home village, Shafir. It was a very cultivated place, very close to the landscape, a multicultural society where Jews and Christians and Arabs and Christians, I said that, but all the different religious faiths and types of people live together in as much harmony as human beings ever do create. They had a mosque, a temple, and a church in almost every town. Shafir has been wiped off the map, like 500 or so Palestinian villages. The Israelis plant forests around them, or they demolition them completely and raze them to the ground and then build settlements. The site of Shafir today, an ancient Palestinian town going back to before the Bronze Age, is now covered over and is a Jewish only settlement. That in itself has, for one town, has got to tell people the arc of what the Palestinians have experienced. 750,000 people were displaced in that year. And there are, I think, what, 2 million more Palestinians who live in exile in refugee camps in Lebanon, in what's the other country?
Syria,
Jordan, and
Syria,
all over. Yep. And there is a tremendous, complete diaspora of the Palestinian people. So, well, we've already hit on a number of aspects of the story. How would you like to talk about the 75-year period since, in a process that we know is still continuing? The Nakba is continuing. It's going on still every day. Talk to us about how you feel about that, what you'd like to talk
yeah.
about.
Yes, brother. I think, brother, before talking about the sustainability of Nakba, I think we have to talk a little bit about some numbers related to Nakba. I
Yes.
have some numbers. Yeah, I have some numbers here. So I think we have to present those numbers to the people who are watching us. As you just mentioned, brother, we have more than 700 1,000 Palestinians were totally expelled out of their villages, out of their lands. And most of those refugees used to migrate to Gaza Strip, to West Bank, to Jordan, to Syria, and to Lebanon. And you know, I think most of the southern Palestine preferred to go to Gaza. Most of central Palestine used or tried to travel to West Bank. The northern Palestine used to immigrate to Syria and Lebanon. So I think it was according to the geographical location of those cities or towns or villages.
In other words, you could walk to them. You had to walk to them, no matter how far it was, and you were being strafed and attacked and insulted and tormented all the way of that walk.
Exactly, brother. Because at that time they had no trucks, no cars. You have only to walk on your feet. So, according to your geographical location, you have to search for the nearest place.
Yes.
To the nearest destination for you. The lucky and the wealthy person in that time, he had a donkey to ride. So if you are so if you were millionaire in that time, maybe you had a donkey to ride. But most of the other people used to walk up on their feet, like what happened with my ancestors who traveled or who migrated from Shafir to Gaza.
And ladies and gentlemen, if you could believe that Muhammad could laugh about that, to see something amusing in that fact, this tells you something about the spirit of the Palestinian people. I want to tell you, I'm a complete neurotic nut, all right? I always think I have big problems. But when I talk with this man, the more I get to know his family, I have no problems. I have no problems. You've got to realize that a friendship like this puts so many things in perspective that give you release, that help you see wisdom and joy and patience and courage. We hardly even know the meaning of the term compared with these folks. Muhammad, I also want to ask you about, well, the people that came, the people that came to the door literally one morning at your family's house and said, "You're going to get out right now, or we're going to kill you." It's that simple, okay? Who were they? A lot of them were migrants from Central European cities, from Russia, where they had not been allowed to own land, let alone farm it before. And so, according to historians like Ilan Pape and Miko Peled, most of those Jewish people knew nothing about farming and living off the land and raising their own food. It was Palestinian families who hosted them. Yes, you can stay in our house for a while. Yes, we will teach you how to settle and to make your living off the landscape. And Ilan Pape has documented by studying the diaries that these immigrants wrote at night about their daily labors, that they were writing with contempt for their Palestinian hosts. They despised these people even as they took every kind of help they could, which is pretty shocking and pretty telling about the character of the apartheid system we're talking about now. One other quick thing is that the there were even labor camps. The Israeli army would come and select Palestinian young and older men to work in 22 different documented labor camps for over a year. They were basically kidnapped away from their families and put to slave labor. So the massiveness and the scale and the brutality of this displacement is still kind of beyond description. Historians are trying every day, but it is. Muhammad, your father was born under a sycamore tree at the side of the road during your mother's march from Shafir to the refugee camp. And I wonder if it's too soon, if you're not, it's up to you. But I would like to know about your childhood, Muhammad. What kinds of memories you have of your childhood growing up in the Gaza refugee camp?
Yes, brother. Unfortunately, we didn't live our childhood. Our childhood was stolen from our lives. Most of my days were spent in sorrow, in curfew. Most of our days, we were not allowed to go out of our doors. We were not allowed to go to a park, to go to play soccer, to go to the beach, to go to the school. We used to live like prisoners inside our house because
And you
in
said
that time,
this was an average of about 240 days out of 365 days a year,
yeah, yeah,
about two
during the
thirds of the
first
year.
intifada.
Excuse me. Yep.
Yeah, yeah. During the first Intifada, which extended from 1987 to 1993, most of our years were curfews. I remember one of our curfews lasted more than 3 months. So we were imprisoned inside our rooms. You cannot even open your window just to take a look to the street. We used to be imprisoned inside our houses for more than 3 months continuously. So,
And as you told
طبعا
me, you couldn't, because you couldn't go out of the house, you had to telephone and hope that a food truck would come to your house with living supplies, with water and so forth. And the only other condition was if there was a pregnant woman in your family who needed to go to the hospital. You had to call ahead to get permission to open the door of your house.
yes, if you want to break the curfew, you should have very strong, very strong uh, reason.
Yes.
So if you have a pregnant woman, you have this reason. You can call the authorities and you can take permission to break the curfew. If you have a very serious health problem like heart attack, like etc., also you can phone them and they can send you the ambulance. I remember once in 1992, once I used to break the curfew because my grandmother was dying. She had a problem in her lungs, and her medicine is over. So she was dying in front of us, and when she used to cough, we used to see some blood comes from her mouth. In that time, I used to cry, and directly, without any permission from my father, my mother, any one of my elders, I used directly to open the door, and I used to go to the street because our neighbor in that time was a nurse, and she had very good quantity of medicine in her house, inside her house. But but unfortunately, they used to catch me exactly like the players who are playing the American baseball. They used to catch me like this, and after that, I don't remember what happened. I lost my you know. They used to beat me in a brutal way with their guns, with their heavy shoes, with their elbows, with their hands. I don't remember what happened because after that,
You're lucky
I
to survive.
I woke up. Yeah, I woke up after that in the hospital.
Wow. And so, I mean, this is a definitive moment of your childhood, Muhammad. And all we have to do now is multiply it by hundreds of thousands of children, at least three generations of Palestinians since the first Nakba in 1948. And how many of those, then millions of lives, have been stunted and robbed and oppressed? for that whole 75 years. Your own children have never known freedom because they were born in Gaza and they are locked in. How in the world do you keep hope going for so long? We've said before in other program discussions that you feel that you know very clearly that the Israelis' goal is to make you lose hope, is to break your spirits. Toward what end? Even then, we don't know. But how in the world do you sustain hope? People, the other half of the Zionist immigrants were survivors of the Nazi Holocaust. And a lot of the world is wondering, well, shouldn't that mean that these are people who would certainly know better than to treat the Palestinians this way? So you must see that, Muhammad, and despair even more. How do the Palestinian people keep hope alive?
Unfortunately, brother, Palestinians, as we spoke some some weeks ago, unfortunately, according to some studies and some reports, most of the Palestinian people, especially in Gaza, are suffering from psychological problems. Most of people are losing the hope in life, in the future. Let me tell you frankly that too much people are believing strongly that death is better than life. Because if you die, directly you go to heaven and you get rid from life and its problems, its pressure, its crisis. So, so some people are believing really that the happy one, the lucky one who die, not the person who's still alive,
And I
because
hope the
life, our
people, I
life,
hope the people who are
life.
watching have read their Bible carefully, because in the first chapters of the Bible, that's exactly the proposition that the Israelites offer to the then long-standing civilizations of Canaan. That was the earlier name of Palestine. You can leave, and that's not going to happen today. You can be slaves to us, and that's not going to happen today. Or you can die, and as Muhammad just told you, it is starting to happen. Is this what we want? Do we want to stand by and allow this to be done for no sane reason that anyone in the world can explain? So, where does your laughter come from, Muhammad? Where does your strength and hope come from?
You know, brother, the situation is very, very bad, and people are suffering too much in their daily life. And unfortunately, uh, Israel is not the sole sinner, because also we have some corrupted Palestinians, whether the government of PA or government of Hamas, both of them are slaughtering people with the high taxes, with this looting. They are looting the wealth from people, and they are putting this wealth inside their pockets, their bank accounts. So they are stealing. They are stealing everything we receive from the outside world, whether from European Union, USA, Canada, etc. So, brother, we are victims to both to Israel and to our corrupted leadership.
And a question I think many people ask too is that, well, why, they talk so easily, but why don't the Palestinians have new elections and vote themselves a government that serves them? Because Hamas certainly does not. The PA certainly does not. We've talked about that in earlier programs in detail about why those government entities would not last 6 months politically unless they were funded by outside sources that want them to remain a thorn in Israel's side, right? But then you say, well, again, why don't they have elections? Why don't they create a government that can make credible peace offerings to Israel and thereby begin to work toward a just situation? Well, one of the answers is Israel assassinates them. Every time a leader among the Palestinians raises his or her head, they are shot or arrested and tortured to death. This is literally what's done. I'm not talking out of my hat here. Go and read your daily newspapers for the last 5 years alone. And they're even killing journalists who even dare to raise these kinds of subjects. Why can't the Palestinians have a new election to bring up new generations who don't believe in hate, who want peace, who are willing to make offers and sacrifices for it? It's hard for the world to imagine, Mohammed, that you are so confined, but holding the Palestinians in place as they are, that's exactly what needs to be done while they are being robbed and pillaged.
Brother, can you imagine that somebody or someone take the choice by himself to commit suicide or to be executed? No one can go by his choice to the execution room to be executed or to be killed. So both of them, Hamas and PA, doesn't take this option to commit suicide. If Hamas and PA decide one day to make a free and democratic elections here in Palestine, I think this is some sort of suicide for both of them. So no one go by his option and his choice to commit suicide.
Yes, and
Uh,
the Israelis are fond of saying there is no partner for peace. There is no one on the Palestinian side that we can negotiate with to begin with for peace, right? But you kill any leader that dares to raise their head. You don't allow elections for them to even begin to foment. And probably the greatest threat to the state of Israel as it is right now is a Palestinian delegation that is making reasonable offers. They want you to remain terrorists in the eyes of the world so that they don't have to talk to you. This is the greatest threat of all, that the Palestinians would make intelligent, humane, justice-based demands for their own equality in their own land. This is a terrible threat.
Yes, brother. Of course, exact, brother. If you give me the opportunity, I want just to mention some numbers or to add some numbers about Nakba. We mentioned that about more than 700,000 refugees were expelled out of their villages. In addition to that, we have about 70 massacres. About 70 massacres
Yes.
were committed in two places, whether inside those villages or uh, on the road
Yes.
during the exodus
Yes.
of those refugees from their original villages to
Yes.
their nearest destination. Uh, as I told you previously, some of those people were massacred by the Israeli Air Force, by the Israeli artillery, even by the snipers. So we have more than 70 massacres were committed only in this year, in 1948. Maybe you know the most famous one is Deir Yassin massacre. Deir Yassin massacre was the most famous one, and in this massacre, hundreds of people were killed and injured and slaughtered, and it's the most cruel massacre among those 70.
And in one of
Another
our
thing,
programs,
brother.
go
Yeah,
ahead. Go ahead.
yeah. Just the last information in
Yes.
this regard. The last thing, brother, as you know, those refugees who were expelled out of their villages, they used to go to so many destinations, as we mentioned, Gaza, West Bank, Jordan, etc. Uh, After that, in the year 1949, those refugees used to form 61 camps, 61 refugees camps. And right now we have the same formation of those camps. Right now they are 61. Let me give you the geographical classification of those camps. Here in Gaza, we have 8 camps. In West Bank, we have 19 camps. In Lebanon, we have 12. In Syria, we have 12. And in Jordan, we have 10. So in total, we have 61 camps. 61 refugees camps were formed by the United Nations. And right now, we are receiving some services from the UN, the United Nations.
While we have a little less than 8 minutes, I think, to go, Muhammad, I would like to ask you, point out one other thing about the years of the Nakba, 75 years and ongoing. I'm an outsider, of course, but one of the most magnificent things I ever saw in my life was the March of Return in 2018, was it? When the Palestinian people of Gaza gathered together without Hamas, organizing on their own, and they marched with their flags and their peaceful intentions close to the borders of the Gaza fence, barbed wire, soldiers, machine guns, tanks, and everything else. And they were shouting and singing for their freedom. Now, it may be asked, what did they expect? That the gates would open up and they would just be allowed to rush into Israel? I don't think so. That's what they were thinking at all. But as soon as they came near those barriers, they began to be shot and killed. And I just can't imagine the courage it took to go unarmed face to face with the Israeli army and to continue that march of return for as long as possible while the world watched people being shot to death for no reason. Medics, journalists, children and women, all of them. There were hundreds of people shot, hundreds more injured, crippled. But this was the most magnificent gesture I could ever imagine toward peace that, well, I myself in that situation might be able to muster. What are your thoughts on that method and what's going to happen? Is that what it's going to take to push the world to realize what's being done? Is it going to take more of that, Mohammed, or what do you think is going to come? Because you're the generation that will decide these things.
Yes, brother. In fact, it was very, very smart notion. I mean, the great return.
The March of Return.
Yes, brother. But unfortunately, we paid very, very high price.
Terrible.
Hundreds were killed. And the most cruel thing is that thousands were handicapped. Thousands
Yes.
were handicapped. Some of them used to lose their arms, their legs. So now we have thousands of handicapped people who cannot walk. They are moving on the wheelchairs. So I think we paid very, very, very expensive price. Theoretically, it's very, very brilliant method to struggle against Israel, but the price was very, very expensive. I think in the near future, it's impossible to repeat it again and to organize another march like that. Because, brother, just as you mentioned, the Israeli army, especially the snipers of Israeli army, used to receive strict commands from their leadership to shoot everyone who participate in those march and to shoot him deadly in his chest, in his neck, in his head. So, brother, I think it's not possible for us to organize this march again. I think our only choice is to have the Palestinian election in order to reorganize our internal political situation, because now we cannot do anything in this separation between Gaza and West Bank. We are very, very small country. So can you imagine this very, very small country and this fragmented country is being ruled by two governments?
Neither of them acts like a government. Both of them
Yeah.
act as if they are there to simply to rob and ignore their own people, meaning you. They do nothing. But, well, ladies and gentlemen, think about this. They're confined. They have no opportunity, no freedom of movement. Their businesses are destroyed by this confinement. Their educations are interrupted, if not stopped altogether. They're not allowed to have new elections that might make the threatening demonstration of peaceful intentions and intelligent proposals for coexistence on the land. What would you do? You can't even put your body on the line because, as Muhammad just explained, they'll simply shoot you to death for showing up and talking loudly about your situation. What would you do in their place? Muhammad, what do you think? Do you think then it's going to come to another war?
Yes, yes, brother. We have only one choice, just to predict wars, continuous wars, war after war. We have nothing other than this. We have only to expect wars because we are victims to this aggressive state, and all the time they are killing, they are beating us, and unfortunately we have no allies. No one is helping us. No one is supporting us. I think you see what happened in Ukraine. All the NATO and USA, even Australia, New Zealand, etc. All of those people are sending cannons, guns, missiles to Ukraine. We don't need arms to confront Israel. We need only some political support, just to have our justice, just to take justice in this unjust life. We don't need guns from U.S. Marine or U.S. Army. We need only some justice, some equality with this neighbor
And I
that we
know you,
have.
Muhammad, for 2 years and more now, and every time we've ever talked about these things, what you've just said is exactly because the Palestinian people do not want to destroy Israel. The Palestinian people do not want to throw the Jews into the sea. They want to live together on land that was originally theirs with the newcomers, just as they did at the very beginning of the Nakba 75 years ago. So, ladies and
Yes,
gentlemen,
brother.
where our time is
Yeah,
going,
let
is there
me.
something you'd like to add, Muhammad, before we go?
Yes, brother. Mr. Arafat has declared that in the United Nations in New York in the year 1974, when
Yeah.
he declared in front of all the nations of the world that, oh, people, we are not going to throw Jews into the Mediterranean. We want them as neighbors. We want to live beside them in harmony, brother. And I think, the PLO political uh, uh, program is depending on this point that we
Yes.
want them as a neighboring state. We don't want to threaten their existence,
Yes.
whether as a nation, as a people, or as a state.
And Muhammad, that is to some people the most frightening thing you've said tonight. And with
Yeah.
that, I want to thank you for talking with us again. We'll have a new program soon. And I hope the whole world will hear this and realize that it's time for this horrible thing to end. Thank you, Muhammad. I'll see you soon.
Thank you, brother. Thank you,
Peace,
brother. Thank you.
peace and love to you and your family.
Thank you. Thank you.